You're listening to Forecast, the marketing podcast for professional services leaders. If you're looking to generate more leads, win more deals, and take your firm to the next level, this show is your shortcut. Hey there, folks. Welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Ahmed Manawar, and today I've got Brent Weaver on the show. Brent is the guy that started a business out of college and never looked back. Now that frustrates me to no end because I always wish that I was that guy, but nevertheless, Brent's journey is very, very instructive. In this interview, we're going to talk about how Brent went from starting a web development business on the side while still in college to growing it into a 14-person agency that at one point was one of the top 10 fastest growing businesses in Denver, Colorado. Now, everything was going really, really well for Brent and his agency until it wasn't. See, there was something that was fundamentally wrong with Brent's business model. There were issues in what he calls the back of the house, and those issues eventually caught up to them. And it got to the point where Brent's agency ran out of cash and had to take out an emergency loan just to stay afloat. And that was the impetus for him to step back and take a good hard look at the fundamentals of the business. There is so much that you can learn from Brent's journey. Brent is very honest and forthright about the struggles and the challenges that he faced both early on in the journey and even as they grew into a larger agency. So really, no matter what stage you're at in your business, whether you're a small solo, you've got a small team, or a large 10-person plus team, there's a lot that you can learn from Brent's journey, and I hope you'll take notice. Show notes are at forecast.fm/Brent. That's forecast.fm/BRENT. Before I let you go, if you haven't yet joined us inside our free course on the 5 Ps of lead generation for professional service firms, you're going to want to check that out. The course is 100% free of charge, and you can get immediate access at 5leadgen.com. You can spell out 5 or use the number. Either one works. That's 5leadgen.com. With that, here is Brent Weaver. Brent, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me here.
Why don't you get us started by telling us the Brent Weaver backstory?
Are we talking about like coming out of the womb and entering planet Earth, or earliest memory?
We can skip a few steps. And let's get into Brent Weaver, the
I'm
entrepreneur.
just kidding. We're not getting graphic today for any of your listeners who just turned the podcast off. We lost them, but I mean, in terms of when I became an entrepreneur, I think is, I guess, officially was when Steve, who's still my business partner to this day, we were 17 years old. We were in high school, and I'd been messing around with computers for a long time, playing, PC games and whatnot. And back then, in order to play a computer game, you actually had to trick your computer into playing the game, and it took a lot of effort to get even the most basic of games to play. And so I learned a lot about computers just trying to play the cool games and things like that. And actually I ended up learning about how to create web pages with Front Page 95, and started publishing some stuff about PC games, and ended up kind of creating this PC gaming website that it didn't become world renowned or anything, but it would give me press passes to big geek conventions and things like that. And I would, so I had this website, and I had to have a server, and that server cost money. And to pay for that, I was working at a fabric store on the weekends, making, I think, $6.25 an hour. And I had another couple people that were helping me with that gaming site. They started kind of backing out and getting busy with other things that you do when you're in high school. And I needed to figure out how to cover the bills for that. So I started to put the word out that I could build websites and maybe do that for money. And that's how Steve, my business partner, he heard about that, and I heard he was doing something online, making some money with some email list marketing. And again, 17 years old. This is 1999. The internet's really just getting its footing out there. And I got a couple of clients that paid me $500 for building some couple pages. It took me a couple days, and I think somebody paid me $1,500 to build a quick little database for an import-export company. That was a really, CGI Perl script flat file database thing. That was my very first, real code that was like a program that worked with the database. And long story short, once I realized I could make thousands of dollars in a week, I went to my boss at my fabric store and I said, yeah, I'm not going to do this anymore. So I quit. And then him and I started a company called Crystal Clear Designs LLC. Steve's dad was an entrepreneur, and he, his CPA/lawyer helped us get our initial filing. We filed with the state of Texas we had $500 in our bank account. We spent it on an attorney creating a business for us, and that was really how we created what ultimately became a 14-person agency in Denver, Colorado. Now, there's a lot of things that happened kind of in between that, but I mean, that was really the start, was telling people that we could design websites or host their websites, and really figuring out what it meant to get customers and to get people to pay you for a service, and just a lot of those business basics, just emailing people, promising something, taking a payment, having to deliver that. We kind of interned, for ourselves in a way over 5 years while we were both in college and working the business nights and weekends, and every once in a while skipping class because server went down or something like that. And so we built up this client roster while we were in school. And in 2005, we had this really big opportunity with an organization out in California called CalCASA, the California Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and it was a high 5-figure deal, like $80,000 to $100,000 deal. And we flew out there to pitch, and that was during our senior year of college, and we actually ended up not getting the deal. But it really it told us that there was an opportunity in this business that we had been doing part-time for years. Told us that this was something bigger than just a few $1,000 extra here and there. It was something that we could create a career out of or build a business around. So we both decided that we were tired of going to school and that we weren't going to go get jobs in the workforce anyways. So, hey, why don't we just quit college and go do business full time? And so we did that. And I guess the rest is kind of history. Steve moved out to Boulder, where I was going to school at CU Colorado, and we started hustling. I think that first year in 2005, when we first started the business, I mean, maybe the business did about 80,000 in gross sales, and neither we didn't get to split that. I mean, a lot of that was for all sorts of expenses and things like that, but at least we were probably making maybe as much money as some of our unemployed graduate friends or whatever.
Yeah. See, Brent, I already don't like you. Okay. And I'll tell you why. Right? So you got 3 strikes in my mind. First of all, you're that guy that started a business in high school, which, I'm jealous is what it is, right? Like, I wish I was that guy, right? Like, and I always hear these stories of these serial entrepreneurs who say, oh, I was selling, handmade computers when I was 9, right? Yeah. And I had very different interests when I was 9 or in high school or college for that matter. But good for you. Your second strike was that you lived in Boulder, which I love, and Denver I love, and I try to visit as much as possible. It's a beautiful space. And your third strike is outside of the fabric store. Have you had like one of those, those soul crushing 9-to-5 jobs?
I had 6 months of, to me it was kind of soul crushing work. So when I went to school for economics. I had first gone to CU Boulder for computer science, and because I had been programming since pretty early, and after my freshman year, they made me like a TA for computer science, and I was just coding all day, or in programming classes and whatever, and then I'd come home and work on my business, and I was coding at night and coding on the weekends, and I kind of got burned out on it and decided that I wanted to learn something completely different in school. And I'd always been interested in economics and in business. And so I actually switched my major over to econ. And that's where I ended up spending the majority of my school time on. And so I during that time, I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I did a couple of things that are outside the box. I don't know if I've ever said this in a podcast, but like I joined ROTC for a couple of years and wanted to be a ranger and jump out of planes. And it was a lot of fun doing that. I was on rifle team and all sorts of stuff. And I also left school for a semester and moved to Australia. And I got a job with the Australian government doing internet communications and technology research and analysis. And that's exactly the kind of job that somebody who was getting an econ degree would have wanted. That was really working for the government, right out of college, and they asked me actually to stay in Sydney and keep working there. But when I went over there and living in Australia, it was fantastic. It was an amazing experience. But the job that I had, I was working 9 to 5, and I was doing research and analysis, which was painfully boring. I had a terrible boss. I had a cube, and I really hated what I was doing. I was going in, sitting at a desk. I had all these ideas of things that I thought I could do or should be creating, and I had to sit there and I had to compile reports and read through lots of data and information. And during that time, I was also running the business on the side. So when I'd get home from work from that job, I'd go, pull the laptop out and I'd start working on client work. And we even had some side businesses and sold a company while I was in Australia too. So in terms of that serial entrepreneur, it's always been there. So here I was super unhappy with the work I was doing, hating what I was doing. And then I was still doing this like moonlighting thing. And I loved the moonlighting. It was giving me all this energy and giving me all this purpose. And I had a lot of passion around it. But then I'd go in and do this work that was super boring. Because you know what? And here's what I'll say is I was doing that because I thought it was what you were supposed to do. I had been programmed since entering school that you go to school, you get good grades, you go to college, you get good grades, you finish college and you get a job and you work at that career until you're 65 or 70 or whatever. And then maybe you get 10 or 15 years of doing your own thing when you're all done. And the school system right now, it preaches that. I mean, all the pep rallies and the speakers that they bring in and your counselor and your teachers, like, go to college, do this thing, go get a job. And the whole time I felt like I was this, really a, square peg in a round hole. Like it never fit with me. I was always doing extra stuff on the nights and weekends. I was always, reading programming books or doing things that weren't taught or weren't offered in school. And I finally realized when I was in Australia, I was like, man, this is like, I can't do this. I really just can't. Like my heart's just not in this. I can't do this for the rest of my life. And that's when I realized that I needed to. That's probably when I started to realize that I needed to do something else. Was that that job, that 6 months of wearing a suit and doing what I was supposed to, and just literally hating it.
Well, I feel better now that you've had that soul crushing experience. So now I think we can be friends, and we'll continue with the interview. But no, I mean, it's funny, right? Because I felt the exact same way going through school. Is I always had that kind of entrepreneurial bug. Although I didn't do anything about it in college, but I had that kind of drive, and I kind of saw myself in the long term, at least, eventually becoming an entrepreneur. But it never occurred to me that I could just do it right then or start right away. I always felt like, well, I got to get a real job first. I've got to do the real world thing first, and then I can become an entrepreneur. And I think you're right. I think it's socialized into you, and it's almost, it's so subliminal in a way. Like I didn't realize that that's what was being communicated to me, but that's what I started to believe.
It's definitely a powerful thing. And I mean, an entrepreneur, so we at Gurus, we coach, consult, and have a business accelerator for people that are running a digital agency. And, we meet plenty of people that are in the opposite situation. They chose entrepreneurship, maybe out of need or out of a personal situation or out of getting laid off or accidentally. They started doing some contract work and it just became a business. And we talk to a lot of people who aren't entrepreneurs and feel almost the same thing of being trapped in having to eat what you kill and have to learn about growing a business. And there's a lot of people that would just prefer to, work at an agency or work at another business and focus on their craft. And I've had a lot of those folks that have worked for me over the years that they see what we go through and they see what we've built. And while they're like, oh, it'd be interesting to have that kind of upside potential, they enjoy focusing on their work, focusing on their craft without having to worry about, the other 6 or 7 hats that are very important to running a business.
Yeah, absolutely. So take me back to the early days of the agency. You've decided to take it full time. You and your partner are working, full steam ahead. I'm sure working to the bone. What were some of the early struggles in those days?
I guess being okay with hot dogs, mac and cheese, and 40s. That would probably be the trifecta of as low cost food as you can imagine. We worked out of our apartment, and we had a little kitchen nook, like a breakfast kitchen area, and it was a 6-foot wide table or 8-foot wide table, maybe, we bought from Office Depot. And this is back before really nice, flat panels and everybody being able to work on laptops. I mean, I had a laptop, but it was like 25 pounds, but we had these big CRT monitors. And so we had these like two 21-inch monitors each, all on this 6-foot Office Depot table. And literally there was so much weight on the table that this table was buckling at the center. And I think by the time we left that apartment, it had cracked in multiple places. And we literally were right next to our kitchen and like the trash can. And if we hadn't done our dishes or something, we're having to sit there through that, that kind of messy bachelor pad-ish. And we lived in the same house and we just worked, and we'd have clients over and they'd have meetings with us at our kitchen table on a regular basis, or we'd meet at coffee shops. And we felt super insecure about all that, didn't really have a confidence in what we were doing. And that affected us in a big way. I mean, it made us feel like we had to get like projects that worked with people that were really in our comfort zone. And, they never had really a lot of money at first. And we would work our butts off for really small amounts of money. And even though we had a lot of talent, we just didn't have that real world experience. And it took us some time to really figure that out. And we actually decided to move the business from Boulder to Denver because it was kind of a strategic move for us. And this was a little bit before Boulder became a software hotbed for a lot of software and tech folks. So at the time when I lived there, that didn't really exist in 2004, 2005. And we moved to Denver to be around a more metropolitan area, be around other bigger businesses. And that was a really good move for us at the time. We moved to Denver, started to do some basic SEO work for our own company, started getting inquiries from companies, and picked up a few 5-figure deals. And that really paved the way for us to turn it into more of a real business of, hiring some people. We had a team in Poland that did some of our creative work. And then Steve and I still did a lot of our, back-end development, the front-end development, some of the design work, but started actually bringing on, we used offshore folks to get a good deal on their rate. And in that way, that gave us a way to kind of hire people without like a full-time US-based salary. And then we continued getting clients, opened an office. I mean, there's all sorts of mistakes there I could get into, but we decided that we wanted to not work out of our house anymore because we kind of wanted a place to go, but one guy, probably a couple people, one guy had come over to do a project meeting, and he, found out that we lived in a loft, like a really nice downtown loft, and, whatever. And he was like, "Oh, I thought you guys were a bigger agency." But, and of course, part of that could be that, we projected that image on our website. Like, oh, we're, at the time, I think our company was named CCD Web Solutions. So we kind of started rebranding ourselves away from Crystal Clear Designs. We went to CCD Web Solutions. That was kind of before we rebranded as Hot Press Web. And, he thought our business should have been bigger, and he didn't want to sign on for like an $8,000 project because we worked out of our home, which is just, stupid. And so we felt a lot of, I think, just self-conscious about that, and thought, okay, if we're going to be a real agency, we need to get the downtown office space. And so we, overextended ourselves and got into all sorts of trouble for the next 2 years.
So what would you say changed between the time that you were, doing smaller deals, really whatever you could find, and you're working from the kitchen, from the living room? What would you say changed between that time and the time that you were able to, finally win some of the larger 5 and 6 figure deals? Like, was it a mindset thing? Was it just an obstacle you had to overcome? Was it experience? Like, what was the difference?
I mean, confidence, I'd say, was a big one, of just having the confidence to talk to bigger companies and understand what they're really after. I mean, we gave a lot of early pitches where, we were over pitching our technology or over pitching ourselves, and we weren't spending enough time really understanding who the client was, what were their problems, what were they trying to accomplish, and then getting into here's the solution. So we didn't really have those core business skills. And then the other thing was, we really didn't know how to market our business. Like, we would just kind of come up with ideas. I remember we got this guy, Andrew Neatlich, I think is his name. he had this professionals marketing handbook or something that we bought. It was this 300-page ebook. We printed it out, had it bounded. And that was kind of how we tried to market our business. It was one of the first books that we had read on how to market a business. And he had some great stuff in there. And so we started executing on that. But the funny thing is we actually got, when we first moved to Denver, we started actually having some really big success. We got a couple of big associations signed on, a 5-figure annual contract. We had a $1 billion oil company that signed on, and literally after we did their initial project, we could just walk into their office, have a meeting with them, and within an hour or two, we could identify another 24 problems that they could pay us, 5 figures to solve again. Like every time we went in and talked to them, we had 4 to 5 figures worth of project work to do. But then something really interesting happened. We actually started, once we got our overhead in place, and we got an office, and we hired a couple employees. We started pursuing everything. Every lead that came in, every opportunity, every person that I met became a potential client, and I pursued it, and I tried to get a deal out of it. And what ended up happening over the period of about 2 years was we went from a couple of really great clients that were really paying the bills to trying to build websites for anybody with a pulse. And our average deal size went from, let's say, $30,000 all the way down to $1,500 over the course of 2 years. This was kind of like boiling ourselves, in water. We didn't realize it was happening at the time, but people were coming into the business. We were not qualifying them. We were investing hours in sales discovery. We were creating proposals that were outside of their budget, probably in some cases that were outside of our capabilities. And we went after every single dollar an opportunity with our fullest energy. And what happened was, while maybe some of our volume went up and the amount of projects we were doing, our margins basically shrank to zero, then negative, and then we got ourselves in a situation where we couldn't pay our bills, and we really hit rock bottom. And that was right around 2007. I always tell people I had $3 in my bank account, and I couldn't afford the gas to drive to work. So I started biking to work, and my team thought I was just trying to get into shape. And the reality is, we had basically ran our business into the ground. And that was very difficult to understand, to have these, and to not really understand why it was happening. And that's a lot of the content and the frameworks that we teach in our accelerator really come out of that, because a lot of people get themselves in that situation. They don't know who their ideal customer is. They don't have a specific market, specialty, geography, industry, psychographic constraint. They don't understand who they really should be working with. They just want to work with anybody with a pulse. And I can tell you right now that I did that. And there are some benefits. Like, it gave us a lot of experience. We worked with a variety of different industries. I mean, there's a silver lining there. But the fact is we hedged our entire company, risked our entire company on the lack of a clear and coherent strategy. And that almost crushed us. And fortunately, we made it through that. I think we have a certain level of patience and persistence and perseverance that got us through that. But it definitely was a wake-up call.
So what was it that compelled you to, kind of go out and, chase any kind of business from any kind of client? Did you feel like you had to pay overhead, or like what was the driving?
Yeah. Payroll, rent, the $1,000 a month T1 line that we had to pay for. I don't know. I mean, there's, you get at the time, and this was somewhat early days in the internet. I mean, now you have social media. You have just this amazing ability to connect with other people. You have got a lot of people that are publishing great information about how to run all types of businesses online. But back in 2007, that really wasn't the case. I mean, you had a handful of bloggers, but you'd kind of look around, and our understanding of what it meant to grow a business was, you get an office, you get employees. But we didn't understand some really basic strategic, and strategy is such a buzzword, and I use it a lot in our program and in our teaching and stuff, but we didn't really understand how important the underlying strategy was of your business. We didn't understand that if we could choose who we spent our time with, that we could choose the type of clients that we were trying to attract, that we could have some kind of influence on that. I mean, we were going after really broad terms like Denver web design. Well, that's great from certain perspective. If you've got great qualification criteria that says, look, if you're looking for a website in Denver and you meet these other criteria, then maybe going after that search term is a really good idea. But if you're going after Denver web design and you're getting everybody that has no business and it has a startup that they're looking to fund with their $2,000 limit on their credit card, all the way up to a Fortune 500 company who's looking for a local agency to hire, and you have to have something on the back end to qualify the bad fits or to identify who you want to work with and who you don't want to work with. So we were going after this tactic first. Let's get our SEO rank up. We didn't have a core business strategy of who we actually wanted to work with. So when anybody came to us from that search term, we were like, oh yeah, like, hey, you don't have a business, you're a startup, you're unfunded. Great, let's have lunch. Or I'll drive across, town to meet with you for 3 hours. Oh, hey, you're a nonprofit that doesn't have a budget and is 4 hours away. Great, I'll go out and meet with you, right? And so, and we pursued a lot of that business with our fullest effort, but we probably could have done 80% less work, had a little bit of a strategic edge to our business plan, and we probably would have gotten much better results doing far less. And that's what we really try to help people with, is answer some basic questions about what kind of work they do, what kind of problems they solve, who is the best fit for them to solve those problems. And then let's come up with some ideas of how to get you in front of those people. And when we started doing that, so just to kind of let you know, like when we hit rock bottom, we had to take on about $50,000 in debt to stay afloat. 25,000 of that went out the door on day one to pay back rent, back salary, et cetera. The other 25K became about a 3-week buffer with our other cash flow to keep the business afloat. And we said, okay, we need to go learn how to run a business. So we joined a business accelerator. We started to talk to mentors that we had known that were in our network and said, hey, this is the situation. What should we be doing? What should we be focusing on? What are we doing wrong? And we started pulling back the curtain and sharing very openly what was going on in what I call the back of the house, behind, in the kitchen if you're a restaurant, right? Like what's the messy stuff? And for a long time, I was very protective of that. I didn't want to tell people about my business ideas. I didn't want to tell people about my business problems. I had a little ego, a little pride there, a little secrecy, like, oh, we're not going to share our secret sauce. But then what happened was, it was kind of crazy. We started to talk about those problems. We started to talk about our issues. We started to show people our numbers and our projects and our contracts and who our clients were. And we started getting really good, actionable advice of what we needed to stop doing and what we needed to start doing. And sometimes it's some of both, that there's some things that you're doing right now that aren't helping you, and having that advice, those mentors to come in and say, hey, this thing over here that you're spending a lot of time on, if you just stop doing that, it's not gonna have any negative impact on your business. Like, oh, okay, cool. And then you do that, and then you get a benefit. And then, hey, this thing over here, to shift some gears and maybe start doing some other things, and you might have some other benefits.
Is there one particular lesson that jumps out at you from those days when you engage with that community of peers?
Oh, there's so many. Some of the basic things that had a phenomenal impact on us. Now, we were a multi-person team. So for anybody that's working solo, this doesn't apply to you. But if you have a couple people in your company, we were really sharing the load on several different things like sales, project management, some dev work. We were all kind of jumping, we were very multi-purpose skill sets. And one of our mentors said, look, you guys need to divide and conquer. One of you, whoever's the best at selling, go spend as much or all of your time selling. One of you that's more operational or project management, you need to spend all of your time dealing with the demand that the salesperson has created. So we, and this took a little time for us to work out the kinks, but I started basically becoming the biz dev person. So I basically had this seat that I had defined, and then my business partner handled the operations and projects. So once I sold something, I handed it off to him, and then he had to produce it. And then I went back out while they're working on that last project. I'm going out there and I'm trying to find that next piece of business. That was very different from how we were before, because I would sell something and then I would share some of the workload of actually producing that thing, whether it was design or development. And then I got that off my plate. The other thing that I got off my plate was I was doing a lot of support and training stuff. So clients that once we launched their websites or we're doing ongoing marketing for them, they'd call me and I would kind of, be their liaison, account manager, if you will. And so that was the other thing. I was taking up about 20 hours of my time every week. I started tracking my time and I saw that and said, you know what? I can let somebody else on my team do that. Now, at first I was like, they're not going to be able to do as good a job as me, blah, blah. And maybe right at first, that was probably the case. They did about 60, 70% as good a job as I did. But then as that person got to own that and learn it and get better at it, and as we put in metrics and training to help them with that, they ultimately ended up doing the job way better than I did. So I got 20 hours of my time back. And I got to use that for selling, networking, marketing. I wasn't doing code and development anymore. We had, we really let go of that and let our team do that. And so that division of roles and getting specific around that, and we didn't really get great at doing that until even about 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm just telling you guys right now, like, to understand what it means to be in a seat, to understand what you're accountable for sitting in that seat. I mean, the general first pass was everything that has to do with sales you do, everything that has to do with project delivery you do. That piece right there probably we probably 2x'd our business in a year just by doing that. And then, some of the other things, like we were just undercharging. I think our hourly was like $65 an hour. We felt obligated to not charge our clients a lot of money, even though we had grown a lot. Our skill sets and the market had, grown, and pricing really, we were undervalued, and we weren't confident about it. And one of our advisors was like, "Dude, you need to raise your rates." So we raised them to like 100 an hour, and just right there, going from 65 to 100. I mean. And we were still just as busy. So all of a sudden, we're making 30, 40% more money. And our pipeline is full because I'm spending almost all of my time doing sales. So those are two of the big things. There was a lot of little things, and I'm probably overlooking some things that we did, but that was two of the really big things.
So why did you feel obligated? That's an interesting choice of words to use to keep your prices low. Was it guilt, or what was it?
I mean, yeah, it could be a little bit. I mean, I talk to people that are in this situation all the time. They have 5 different rates. They have the rate that they charged their clients, 10 years ago to, when they first started out, and they still charge those clients that same rate. Then they decided at some point to charge, a little bit more, but they didn't roll it out on their old clients because they didn't want to upset the apple cart. They felt like, those people trusted them way back when, and they want to continue to reward that relationship with a low rate, blah, blah, blah. I mean, that was where we were at. And I talk to people every day that are in that situation. I was talking to somebody earlier today that, they knew that they should raise their rate, but they felt like if they raised it, that some of their older clients would leave their business. And, I kind of at this point I go, so what? So what? Find new clients. If your business model doesn't work for them, that's not your problem. And, but people are humans, and you have a relationship with people, and you don't want to let them down. I think a lot of salespeople or entrepreneurs at some level want to make people happy, or satisfy them. And that's one of the things, what makes them a great entrepreneur is that they're trying to please people by solving their problems and helping them. And sometimes that goes too far. And then you end up in a situation where you have 5 different rates. And some of, what we found was, and we had a couple of clients that even had some grandfather stupid low rates, like $50 an hour. We were actually losing money on that. We had, from when we set that price, when we were in college, it had 0 overhead, to when we had a downtown office and team members and management and servers and stuff. Like, there was a lot of business growth that happened there. And so we ran the numbers, and every time we did an hour worth of work for $50, we were losing money, hard cost money out the door. We would have been better off not to do the work than to spend that hour working on that. And so, I think there's confidence and fear around, if I raise my rates, what's going to happen. And so look, when in our bootcamp program, very first thing we do, very first meeting, first discussion, what are your rates? How can we help you raise them? What's your plan to do that? What are you going to communicate? Every business out there right now can raise their prices by 10% and they will not lose a customer. They will not. I mean, unless you're in some crazy, hyper competitive, wholesale driven market where you're doing deals with Amazon for products or whatever. But all service businesses right now, if you're charging $100 an hour and you turn around tomorrow and you raise your rate to 110, you're not losing any customers. If you're charging 50 and you raise your rates to 55, you're not losing any customers. But what you have done in a very short amount of time is you've increased your profit margin, your net take home for the entire year by 10%. So if you're making 100K and you raise your rates by 10%, you're going to make 110,000. For a lot of people, that extra 10% is the difference between taking a vacation or not taking a vacation. Maybe buying a car or not buying a car. And so it's a really big deal. So even if you're an agency, and again, I was talking to a company today that's, $5 million a year company, and they're really stressed about raising their rate. I'm just like, dude, like, you guys are a $5 million company. If you guys raise your rate by 10%, that's $500,000 that the partners are going to share, assuming that, you continue being as crazy busy as you are today. And so that was powerful for us, was when we raised our rates. And here's the voodoo. We raised our rates. We thought we were going to lose all of our clients. Didn't lose one. And not only that, but the clients that we communicated that to all of a sudden started taking us more seriously. Said, hey, these guys, obviously they think they're more valuable. They must be more valuable. We need to get them more involved. We started getting more work after we raised our rates than we had before we got a raise. And we started taking ourselves more seriously. We started working a little bit longer hours. We started to put more time into the business, the systems. We started seeing some profit come out of the business. We started paying ourselves competitive salaries. So we got to take the business a lot more seriously. And in turn, the business grew faster, right? So there's this like weird correlation, and we see it with our graduates and our students every time, of where your rate, whether you tell your client your hourly rate or not, what you use to calculate your pricing, what you use to think about how much you're trying to charge or do, it plays a really big impact on it's a really small number, but it plays such a huge impact on what ends up happening to your P&L over the course of the year and your mindset. So.
Yeah, no, I love that. Pricing is 100% psychology. And I think what people don't realize is it's psychology from the customer's perspective. It affects the way that they perceive you, how serious they take you, all of those things. But it also affects your own psychology. You take yourself more seriously. You begin to value your own work more than you did before.
Absolutely. I mean, the first time I had somebody pay me 10 grand for a day of consulting, I was like, what? Did that just happen? So it happens that when that confidence, what happens that first time? The first time, you go to a client, let's say you guys are out there right now, you're charging $50 an hour. Brent says, hey, you can raise that by 10%, but you probably can raise it by 50% and not lose any clients. But you do that and you go through that experience, and that's where experience versus knowledge, there's such a nuanced difference there, and it's very, very powerful. It's small, but it's powerful. Somebody tells you should raise your rate, and you know that you should, but you don't do it. You have the information, but you don't really have confidence with information. You just know something's possible, or you think you should do something. Now you get the experience of raising your rate or charging a little bit more, pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone, and you win that deal. All of a sudden, once you've got that experience validated, that's where the confidence comes from. Because then the next person that comes along and says, hey, I want to build a website, I need some help with growing my business, whatever. And you go to them and you go, well, last time I proposed 10K for a day of consulting, like maybe I'm going to do 15, or maybe I'm just going to, it won't cause me any stress, and you'll be able to talk about pricing better, or you'll be able to present your offer more clearly and coherently. So yeah, pricing is a lot of psychology now. So if you go in and double your prices, if you're charging $100 today and you hear this thing from Brent and Ahmad and you're like, oh, I'm going to charge $200 an hour because they said it's possible. At some point you will find the market ceiling. And as you get into that 100% or 200% price raise, we had one guy in boot camp one time that, he got motivated and he was like, I'm going to raise my rate 300%. And went from like $80 an hour to something crazy, like $240 or something. And, his clients all said, yeah, see you later. But because he, and maybe his mindset wasn't there yet. Maybe his psychology wasn't there yet. Maybe his skill set or his, what he was able to produce for them, he exceeded the market limit for himself. But that is having over 1,000 people now graduate boot camp. That is, it's rare. Most of us are constantly undervaluing ourselves, and we view ourselves more in a negative frame than a positive or overly optimistic one. And I think that's the trait of being a human, that you look on the horizon, you see a lion, and your body has a stronger reaction with fear than it does if you look up on the ridge and you see an apple tree and it's a orchard of food for your family, right? Fear is just DNA. Like we are just laden with DNA that makes us respond better to fear. But, maybe that's a different podcast episode.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think a really practical way to get over that fear, and you alluded to this, is before you raise your rates for your existing clients, start testing higher prices with new clients. Because if they're going to agree to your new prices, why wouldn't your old clients, who, if anything, you have more credibility and authority with them than anybody else because they've been working with you. They know how valuable you are. Right. So if someone else will pay the higher rate, your existing clients will almost definitely pay the higher rate.
And you could even argue they should even pay an even higher rate because of all of the knowledge and information you have about their business versus somebody that you don't know anything about, a new client. Why are they paying a higher rate when you actually have more built up intellectual property about your existing clients? But again, I think most people find a more standard issue to do exactly what you just said, Ahmad, which is, test some things out in the market, not with the folks that are paying you today, but with the folks that might pay you in the future. You get a little bit of that confidence that you can turn around and raise your rates across the board.
Absolutely. So listen, tell me a little bit about the work that you're doing now at Gurus and the Bootcamp.
Yeah, so we run a 10-week business accelerator for early stage digital agencies. So you have 1 to 10 people on your team, and we can help you a lot with marketing, sales, and operations, projects, stuff like that. But I'd say the majority of that program, even though we do a lot on process and project management and team structure, I'd say the majority of that program is dedicated to some front side problems around business strategy, marketing your business, and how are you, what are your sales systems in place? And what we try to get people to the point of is what we call high value work for high value pay. So that if you're commoditized right now, if you're struggling with, these bottom dollar clients, things like that, we want to put you in a place of power and control and expertise with the right market so that you're able to get above market wages, but you're also doing work that matters for your clients. This is not about, using some tactic to just charge your clients more money. This is about having a deeper conversation with them about what they're really trying to accomplish with their business. What are their goals? What would move the needle for them? Are they buying just a website, or are they trying to get more? Are they trying to grow their business? Are they trying to attract more customers and leads? And the website's the way. And how can you guys really work together to make that happen? That's what we call high value work. So we teach you a lot about what are the things that companies and nonprofits and organizations are paying a lot of money for right now. What do they really value? And how do we make your services and skill set that you have right now, how do we make it line up with those things, those finished story benefits? And then how do we get you in front of the right customers? So if you're not working in the right market, or, it's funny, we ask people like, well, what market do you want to work in? And people coaches that are just starting out. I'm like, wow, you realize those people have like maybe 30 grand a year in revenue. So let's try a different business type, because you're never going to get a $20,000 project from somebody that's making 30K a year. So that's where our mentorship comes in place. So our accelerator is all mentor driven. All of the folks coming through get assigned a mentor based on their specific background and the goals they're trying to accomplish. And that mentor works with them every week in a group setting. And then they also get some one-on-one time with that mentor. And our goal is your first or next $10,000 project. So one of the reasons that we created that as a 10-week program was we really wanted you to be able to get some new leads and opportunities using our methods, actually go through our sales process at least once with a live client, and be working with your mentor as you go through that project, and then giving you that guidance and encouragement and helping you build that confidence to charge higher prices or to navigate those waters in real time with your opportunities. And ideally, selling a 10K project. Now, for some folks, they go through program and they build some of their foundation, and then maybe it's a month later they sell a high value deal. One of our mentors, she graduated boot camp, and 2 months later she sold her first 5-figure deal. She sold a $24,000 deal. Now it's like that's almost her entry point. She actually signed a $250,000 deal with a major organization, and is now working with companies in the Fortune 500. So it's a progression, but it all starts with that bootcamp accelerator.
Well, it sounds like an incredibly valuable experience. We're going to drop a link to the bootcamp and to you Gurus in the show notes of this episode. Brent, thank you so much. This has been incredibly valuable and really inspiring.
Yeah, Ahmad, my pleasure, man. And best of luck to you. And thanks for having me on the show.
My pleasure.
Hey, it's Ahmed here again. Before I let you go, there are 2 things I want you to do. The first is, if you like what you hear, go ahead and subscribe to the show on iTunes or Google Play by visiting forecast.fm and clicking on the relevant link. While you're at it, please do leave us a rating or a review because it helps more people discover the show. The second thing is I want you to grab my free course on the 5 Ps of lead generation for professional services firms. Inside the course, you will get a step-by-step framework to help you generate a flood of new business for your firm. The course is 100% free of charge, and you can get immediate access at 5leadgen.com, and you can spell out 5 or use the number. Either one works. That's 5leadgen.com. Thanks for listening.